Today, we're talking about the most recent injury update around the Chicago Bulls. We're also going to be previewing today's game against the Sacramento Kings. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with the most recent injury update around the Chicago Bulls. And so got a chance to look at this on ESPN.com. And so it looks like that Patrick Williams, Modest Buzelis, Josh Giddey, and Jalen Smith are all listed as questionable. And so for Josh Giddey, he rolled his ankle just like Modest Buzelis. And then with Patrick Williams, he's been dealing with the quadricep. And then with Jalen Smith, he's been dealing with a calf strain. And so let's go ahead and let's start with the injuries here around the Chicago Bulls. And so just starting from that last video that we just did, I talked about this with Modest Buzelis and Josh Giddey. I think that these are both players that have really taken a step forward this season. And I think that these are players certainly you don't want to rush back. I do appreciate the competitive spirit out of both of these players. I think that that's something that you do not question with Josh Giddey and Modest Buzelis. Both of those players are tough. But I do think that, look, right now, with where the Chicago Bulls are at, you probably need to just make sure that these guys are fully ready to go before you throw them out there. And so if they're not 100%, I'm not putting him out there in the lineup. As for Patrick Williams, look, if Patrick Williams is ready to go, certainly go ahead and throw him out there. I think that at times he's shown some moments, and that's what we've really saw from Patrick Williams, I think, throughout his career with the Chicago Bulls, is that he's shown us some moments, but he just really hasn't been able to put it together. And so with Jalen Smith, you know, he's a player to me that I think that if you're doing season awards for the team, he certainly has to be in the running for the most improved player, because I think that he's done a great job with the minutes that he's got here with the Chicago Bulls, you know, especially since they went ahead and they've thrown him out there in the starting lineup. And they've just really given him a chance. I think that last season, he didn't necessarily get that chance. And so I don't know if it was due to the fact that he was battling, you know, just some of the injuries and stuff like that, or whatever the case may be. I just know that he was not getting the chance in the rotation. But this year, he's done a great job. And when you look at his numbers, he certainly increased from his first season with the Chicago Bulls. He's up to 10.3 points a game. That's up from the 8.2 that he had in the first season. When you look at the block shots, that has gone up as well from 0.3 to 0.5 for him. And then when you look at the assists, that has gone up to 1.3, up from the 1, and the rebounds as well. And so he's gone from 5.6 rebounds up to 7 rebounds. That's almost ties the best rebounding that he's had in his NBA career at 7.6. And so he's almost there. And so that just lets you know what he's doing with the rebounds. And so we talk about it on a nightly basis with Jalen Smith, is that he continues to get the double doubles. And then his 3-point percentages, look, that is something that was really in question coming in. You wondered, could he continue to shoot the basketball as well as he did in the 23-24 season with the Pacers, where he shot 42.4%. And so look, he shot 38.5% this season. And I think that there's a chance where that can continue to go up. And so he's showing that he can be a legitimate 3-point shooter, you know, at that forward position or that center position. And also too, his field goal percentage has gone up. And so he's at 49% this season. And so again, when you're looking at players just again within the team, if you're looking at just who was most improved this season, I think that you certainly have to think about Jalen Smith. And I think that with Jalen Smith and that injury with the calf injury, much like Modest Buzelis and Josh Giddey, I'm not necessarily rushing him back from that, especially with the calves and just how serious that injury is, because that can lead to an Achilles. And I just think that right now, with where the Bulls are at with their season, I think that you just want to just go, you know, with caution when it comes down to those players. And so anyway, you guys let me know what you guys are thinking about here with this most recent injury update going into this game against the Sacramento Kings, which leads me to the next point. in talking about this upcoming game against the Sacramento Kings. And so the last game against the Kings, the Bulls were able to get that win. You had Zach LaVine, you had Sabonis that also played in that game. And so in this upcoming game against the Kings, it's going to be a lot different because Zach LaVine is not there. Sabonis is not there. You still do have DeRozan that's going to be out there. And yes, the Bulls will not have, we'll see if they have Modest Buzelis and Josh Giddey. They're certainly not going to have Vooch out there. And so, both teams coming into this game looking different. And I think that really, for me, it's not about necessarily the win or the loss, but I think it's going to be more so in what we see from Billy Donovan and these lineups. I've talked about this before in the last video. I think that players like Leonard Miller, just they have to play. And so even if Patrick Williams is out there, that's fine, but you really need to see what you have with these players. And I've said this before too in prior videos that, look, you can practice and everything else, that's great, but at some point to really take it to the next level and to really grow as a player, you need to get some game time situations out there. And so players like Leonard Miller, players like Rob Dillingham, like these are players that will need to play. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. That is really what I'm looking forward to seeing. I've talked about this with Nick Richards. I think that he's a player that's certainly come on over the last couple weeks since he's been traded to the Chicago Bulls. And so seeing him provide that interior toughness, hitting the rebounds, and then also too being a lob threat with that interior defense is something that I'm watching for, along with Colin Sexton. And so I talked about that with Colin Sexton. I think that he's a player that he could possibly play his way back to Chicago next season. It really depends on the contract. It depends on what the Bulls are going to do with the backcourt, because there is the possibility that, look, man, maybe they do move on, from a backcourt player. And so not saying that it necessarily is going to be Trey Jones, even though I've said that, look, he is probably going to be, I think, one of your bigger trade chips if you are looking to maybe trade and then maybe try to get up into the draft or something like that. Maybe he's one of those players along with Jalen Smith. But I think that, look, Colin Sexton, with the way that he's playing, maybe if Rob Dillingham doesn't work out, maybe you pivot and you go there. And so either way, you get a chance to see some more of that and what he can do. And so let's see if the Bulls can come out, really play with the same type of effort that they played with against the Phoenix Suns. And then also too, in the process, can the Bulls continue to show that they are willing to evaluate players, as they are going to need to make a lot of changes in this offseason to this team. We certainly know that this team will need to make some adjustments. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are looking for in this upcoming game. Again, I said that Billy Donovan is going to have to prioritize some player development here as the Bulls get set to take on the Kings. The last time out, the Bulls did beat the Kings. Also, let me know what you guys are thinking here with this latest injury update. So again, I think that, look, with Modest Buzelis, Josh Giddey, Jalen Smith, you're not wanting to necessarily rush them back, especially with Jalen Smith dealing with that calf injury, which could turn into an Achilles. And so hopefully, he is ready to go, because he has dealt with that calf really throughout this season. And with Josh Giddey and Modest Buzelis, look, they have shown the toughness, but these are building block pieces for your team. And so you don't want to necessarily throw them out there if they're not 100%. And then with Patrick Williams, look, if he's ready to go, certainly throw him back out there. Hopefully you start to see some more flashes from him, and maybe he can put together a nice little stretch here with about 19 games left. And so we'll be talking post-game with the Chicago Bulls as they get set to take on the Sacramento Kings. And look, as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.